Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. We're playing a little Monster Hunter Wilds. Yeah, I have a pretty good number of hours in this game at this point.
Anything you like. How about
According to Steam, it's 100 hours, but that's obviously going to be slightly inflated from when I left the game running, but not that much. I guess maybe check the in-game time, but it doesn't matter. I'm a hunter rank 151, which is not drastically high or anything, but I haven't been like obsessive about bumping it up, and I play exclusively offline. I've done, I think, 1 or 2 hunts. 2 hunts I did online. And it was fine. I didn't have like bad experiences or anything, but it didn't really seem that particularly fast compared to me playing solo. So I was just like, okay. I don't know, Monster Hunter multiplayer is just something that's never really appealed to me drastically, much like Dark Souls or Elden Ring online, you know, something like it's just like this is a series about you and the monster, you know. And that's what it's about. That's where it comes into its own. But I don't know. Anyways, yeah, Monster Hunter Wild is pretty good. Certainly my favorite Monster Hunter up to this point. And I played through the story, which is, you know, what I'm still uploading, mostly with the Switch Axe, and it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed playing the Switch Axe and stuff. Afterwards, once I hit high rank, started playing on my own. Well, after all the story did, you know, all that, I switched over to Sword and Shield. And man, Sword and Shield is fucking cracked in this game. Like, I can't believe that they released that and were like, yeah, that seems good and balanced and stuff. Like, once you don't even really have to be that good with Sword and Shield. Once you moderately understand how it works, like, it's almost impossible to die. Even against, like, the hardest fight in the game. Now, my first attempt doing 5 strength tempered Gore Magala, which I think most people agree is the hardest fight in the game currently. I actually did triple cart. Because I really just did not know the fight at all, and, you know, it was a little rough. But then, after my second attempt, it was quite easy. I don't think I carted at all on my second attempt. It's just... there's the perfect guard mechanic, right? Where basically, if you guard, like, just before you would get hit, you basically take no stamina loss, you take no damage, and it sets you up for a good strong counter hit as well. Fuck. And perfect guard, you can basically block like almost anything, especially if you have guard up. And you have like offensive guard and another guard buff and stuff. Like, you basically have lance levels of protection. And the Sword and Shield, especially egregious, because you can do this move trying to talk, so I'm really not performing well. You can do this move with the sword and shield, where you hold out your shield, and then you just slash quickly with your sword. It's a guard slash. The thing is, I mean, normally that move would be practically useless. I mean, no one would give a shit about it. But the thing is, for whatever reason, that move has, like, an enlarged window for a perfect guard during the attack. So basically, you just hold your shield out, and then right as, around when you're gonna get hit, you do the guard slash, and you'll perfect guard. And then you combine that with the fact that the sword and shield does pretty good damage. Like, surprisingly good. And basically, you just never stop attacking. You're just constantly dancing around the enemy, doing a decent amount of damage, taking no damage, constantly blocking. And it's pretty obscene. Is it the best weapon in the game? That's debatable. Because, what is best? What does that mean? Because I switched to Charge Blade then, once I basically just dominated the entire game with Sword and Shield. I was like, okay, I gotta switch it up a little bit. So I checked out a bunch of weapons. A lot of them, yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not one of those types of players that just, like, I like every weapon, and I'll hunt every weapon equally, and they're all great. Like, no, I'm still never gonna use Great Sword. I tried. It's just not my thing. I just can't stand moving that slowly, attacking that slowly. I get it. It's got the biggest numbers. Great. Still not for me. In a similar vein, Hammer is... Yeah, I like the idea of Hammer, but I guess Monster Hunter Wilds Hammer is just not very good. And I don't know enough about Hammer to tell you why. But I did some hunts with it, and it just felt really slow to kill stuff. Dual Blades. I spent some time with Dual Blades. They were fine. I mean, it's kind of fun, but again, like, I felt like I was using them somewhat competently. And yet my kill times were really just not impressive. Insect Glaive was another one that I really like bow staffs. Donatello's my favorite turtle, partly because he used the fucking bow staff, and I just think it's badass. And when I did martial arts, that was my jam. Just wanted to get better and better with the bow staff. But the Insect Glaive has this thing where now you can, if you have a red Kinsect buff, you can charge up your circle attack. But you have to hold down circle to do it. And it just makes for a very awkward weapon. Especially, the other thing is, Insect Glaive actually wants to be in focus mode like 90% of the time. Because if you do an attack, do one of your basic attacks in focus mode, it actually sends your Kinsect out. Yep. It sends your Kinsect out along with it, and then Kinsect hits alongside you. So you want to spend most of your time in focus mode. And there is a toggle to put it into a toggle focus instead of holding it down. But it just doesn't feel right. And I just don't... I don't know. But Charge Blade is pretty fucking badass. And I'm not very good with it, but it's just so obscenely powerful with the Savage Axe mode Um, and it doesn't take much to you know, get your buff, get into Savage Axe mode, and then just shred through an enemy and just often just stun lock enemies into oblivion. And it's quite satisfying. I've seen people lament that the days of just spamming the SAD, kind of the big super power move you can do, those days are over. Because it's more effective to just use Savage Axe combos. I agree. I mean, I kind of saw that independently just when I was learning to use it. It's like the SAED doesn't seem that good compared to just doing my basic combos over and over. But, you know, it's still very good. It's definitely not, and I'm definitely not as good with it as Sword and Shield. I definitely die more with this than Sword and Shield. But my kill times where I don't die are faster. So it's just pretty fun. I'm shocked myself at how much I've been playing Monster Hunter Wilds. Because the roster of monsters is good. I mean, the monsters we have here, but it's like I've hunted all these monsters quite a bit now. But it's just fun. Like, it's just... and it's, like, tough. I did reinstall Monster Hunter Rise, and I played it for, like, an hour, and it's just like, ugh. There's too many things that are just, like, quality of life, and, like, just the fidelity of it. It's a Switch game, you know, and just... it's just not as good, and just, I don't want to play. I'd rather play more Wild. So that's all that. That's all that to talk about. This week on this channel, Monster Hunter Wild. There's actually not that many videos left. Not a super amount because it wasn't a super long game with story quests. Also solo roll manging. I have so many of those roll manging videos. It's kind of disgusting. And I'll be honest, I was sitting here today thinking about recording some more. So, you know, it just kind of is going to be a staple of the channel for a good long while. Here's sort of the power of the Charge Blade, as I was referring to, where it's just like, they can't fucking do anything. And you see numbers constantly popping up, and it's just glorious. Look at this. Oh, disgusting. This is a tempered monster. Dead. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so more Monster Hunter, more solo roll manging. After that, I don't know. I have Baldur's Gate I could upload because I'm not finishing it, so it's just kind of done now. But I also have the Wizardry series, which is also not done with. Just partway through Wizardry 8, the last one. But I could upload that. There's also... There's got to be something else that was coming out. Xenoblade Chronicles X. The remaster is coming out in a few days. And the original version is being worked on for Archipelago. So I was kind of interested in maybe looking into that. So maybe I could play the remaster. That's not going to be on Archipelago, but, you know, still something to play. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Commencing quest now. Are you prepared?
But yeah, a lot of solo role manging. Lego and I finished our playthrough of Split Fiction last night. Which was pretty good. I mean, if you like It Takes Two, I would definitely recommend Split Fiction. If you haven't played It Takes Two and you're looking for a co-op game, I would recommend It Takes Two first. Unless the theme... What am I doing? Unless the theme of It Takes Two is just so off-putting and Split Fiction appeals to you more. What am I doing? I think Split Fiction was pretty solid when it comes to just like non-stop action and gameplay and stuff like that. What It Takes Two is sort of the better experience, I would say. And we both kind of concluded that overall, It Takes Two is the better game, but Split Fiction was fun, and we enjoyed our time with it. Although probably wait for a sale, because it is kind of expensive, even for two people, considering how much gameplay is there. Over on the Exploring series, we had part 5 of Black Adatum, and this tomorrow will be part 6, which ended up being 2 hours and 17 minutes. Which makes it, I think, the longest part of any video I've ever done. You know, not counting combined videos. And the combined video will end up being the longest combined video on a single article that I've done. So, it's a long boy. Fuck. I didn't know it was going to be that long. It's really funny. I'm just a terrible judge of the length of articles and stuff. It has happened repeatedly where I just have no idea how long a video is going to end up being based on based on the article at a glance. I mean, I could like load it into a text editor and see like the word count or something, and that would give me a good idea, but I just don't. I just spitball on it and I'm often wrong. So yeah, 2 hours and 17 minutes. But it's over now. until we get to the Iron Proposal, the follow-up to this, which will be probably pretty insane in multiple ways. But we should be then moving into smaller territory for a little while now. Simpler videos for a little bit. Oh, I didn't want to do that. God, I forgot about that. Shadacha. That's all that going on. Yesterday on D&D with my family, we're still down to just 3 players till next time we play. And we're continuing Evils of Ilmire. And they had just met with the druid Yoravar hiding out in the spider caverns, and they had gotten some info from him about this cult that's operating in Ilmire and fucking everything up. And you know, he agreed to kind of try to gather more information for them, and he would send messenger pigeons if he learned anything. And he told them about, you know, an evil assassin. It's kind of out to get him and could be out to get them soon as well. Fuck. And am I enjoying Monster Hunter Wild? Yes. I've put in about 100 hours now.
More supplies have been added.
So then they went out a separate tunnel from the spider caverns that I invented. And they ended up near the Observer's Tower. Although they don't know that it's the Observer's Tower, they just know it's some weird magical tower. And they started the session, and I was like, yeah, okay, so this area of the woods you're in is, like, kind of, oddly quiet. Like, oddly devoid of life. Like, there doesn't even seem to be birds here or anything. So they were sitting around kind of discussing what they wanted to do, and they had definitely a concern. Well, Lego mostly had a concern for their ration supply, because now we're tracking rations, and every day out here they got to use rations. And this is exactly what I wanted. You know, I want them. I think it adds a real kind of verisimilitude to the whole experience, where being out in the wilderness is not just like, oh yeah, okay, we're trading town for a forest, and we're trading a forest for a dungeon, and it's all kind of the same thing. It's like, no, you know, there's a lot different challenges out here. There's a reason the average person doesn't just wander into the woods and camp out for the night. And it's not just that there's monsters out there, you know?
It's always a treat to watch.
So yeah, he was definitely concerned about rations, and he didn't want to, and I explained to them, well, first, we spent a whole bunch of time leveling them up to level 2. Because I went over how they can get XP in Tales of Argosa, and there's multiple ways you can get XP. You know, fighting things, looting things, exploring locations, social interactions, you know, all sorts of stuff like that. And so, in light of that, I gave them some more XP for the last session, because of looking over the list and everything, there should have been more given. And that's, I mean, we're a long way off on my uploads of solo role Mangg until I get to Tales of Argosa. But I kind of learned all this and went over this and changed all this, various things when I started playing Tales of Argosa myself. But basically, I massively increased the amount of XP required to level up as you level up. And that's because I found that I was quite generous with myself with how much XP I was giving out. So yeah, I want to try to be fairly generous to them, because I think it's fun. I think it's fun to get a bunch of XP. You know, even if you need more XP, it is fun to get a lot of XP. And I think the whole concept of the kind of game experience here, in which you know, I have this hex crawl, there's kind of a central plot that they're concerned with. They got to deal with this epic cult that's taken over this town doing evil stuff, but they're not powerful enough to deal with them yet. You know, they're level 1. They're a bunch of schmucks. And so they have this whole wilderness out here that's not necessarily important to the plot of the cult. You know, there's all these dungeons out here that are just kind of ancillary to the plot. But they can do all this. They can go around, they can explore, and they can get XP. They can level up. They can get more powerful magic items. They can gain allies in their kind of battle against the cultists at the end. And then eventually, you know, they're high enough level, they've gained powerful items, powerful allies, and they've gained information about the cult. They know how they're operating, and they can finally take the battle to them and end this thing once and for all. I mean, that seems all fun to me. And I think it sounds fun to them. So, yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good. So, they leveled up to level 2 then, because I gave them some more XP. And so that took a while to go over all that. You know, in a perfect world, and this is not a perfect world, so I know it's a far cry from a perfect world. In a perfect world, they would all have, like, PDF copies or physical copies of the rulebook. And they would, I'd say, okay, you're level 2. And they're like, oh, shit, yes, now I get this. Or, you know, and they'd go to their rulebooks and they'd see what they all get. And they'd, you know, level themselves up with no guidance from me or anything, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're not living in that world. And so, I kind of have to go through one by one, because they're all playing different classes. And there's a lot of questions that get asked from each of them about their new abilities. And they all have to painstakingly write down with pencil their new stuff, and I have to talk very slowly and repeat things and so on and so forth. Lego, fortunately, does have a laptop there. He uses a form fillable character sheet, and he has the rulebook on his laptop and stuff. And that helps. He's definitely a bit more with it. I don't have to quite explain as much to him. And this is all compounded by the fact that we're not running Tales of Argosa completely as written, because I've made changes. Some that do make things easier, theoretically. Some make it harder. In my opinion, all for the better, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the changes. But then that does serve to confuse Lego, because he has the Tales of Argosa PDF, but then, like, we're using spells from Axe, so I had to give him the Axe rulebook, which is 550 pages. And has just a lot of information. But anyways, yeah, so they all leveled up to level 2, and they were all pretty excited, mostly excited about their new abilities. Like, my aunt now has a gun. She's very excited to have a gun. And then, yeah, so they were trying to decide what to go, where to go, what to do, blah, blah, blah. They know that they want to become allies with the Froglings. And they know that to gain the Froglings as an ally, they have to deal with the Mantis Men, because they're at war with the Mantis Men, and the Mantis Men are evil. And you know, blah, blah, blah. And so they started heading... I think they were trying to find the Froglings first. I don't know. They waffled back and forth a lot. I try not to listen to too much of them, just kind of like trying to decide. Because that's just a bunch of noise to a DM, you know. Until I hear a concrete plan of what they want to do. It's all just noise. So, eventually they headed northeast. Which was the Mantis Men territory. I'm like, okay, they're looking for the big Mantis Men home. All is well. And it doesn't take them long to see this big mound of dirt sticking out of the earth, you know? And that's the Mantis Men's lair. But then they got kind of, like, frightened of it. And they wanted to just keep moving north, I think northeast? I think they kept moving northeast or something. I'm not really sure what their plan was. They probably don't know what their plan was, but whatever. They kept moving northeast. And they ended up near, like, the quicksand pits. And they decided to camp there because it was getting dark and they didn't want to wander around in the dark near the quicksand pits. And during the night, of course, they got a random encounter against a single solitary giant gecko who was just hunting for food at night for whatever reason. And my mom was on watch. She decided to just confront it with her sword or her knife or whatever and not wake the others. The others did, of course, soon wake up, but yeah, Lego was very upset that she didn't wake them. And so he was complaining, and then she was like, all right, yeah, fine, I wake them. And I'm like, nope, nope. I'm going to force you to stick with your original thought and not succumb to Lego's meta bullshit that he always tries to pull. And, so yeah, they got into a little scuffle with this giant gecko, and it rolled really well against her, and they were rolling not so well against it, so it kind of just latched onto her thigh and just wouldn't let go, and she ended up taking quite a bit of damage. Just from this one giant gecko. But then the rest of the night happened, and they actually did carve the giant gecko up for rations, because again, they're really, Lego especially, very concerned about their food supply. So none of them have wilderness lore though, so they didn't carve it up too well. They only got a few rations out of it, but it was their food for the evening, so they were pleased enough. The next day they continued south. And they ended up in the gecko fens, where most of the giant geckos in the region live and raise their young and stuff. So this is the common hunting ground for humans from Ilmire, for froglings, for mantis men. You know, everybody kind of hunts here. And yet the gecko population lives on. And so they were just kind of traversing through there, and they rolled up another random encounter, and it ended up being a troop of mantis men that were hunting for giant geckos. And I don't remember how I decided that they spotted the mantis men before the mantis men spotted them. Shouldn't have really happened without some sort of extenuating circumstances, but maybe I was being generous. I try to be generous with them. So they spot the mantis men kind of on the hunt, being stealthy, and so they all get down and they watch them, and they start following them. They start following the mantis men, and they roll their stealth checks successfully. I mean, really, I should have been rolling the Mantis Men's perception checks to counter it, but I was like, you know, we'll just keep this simple, because Lego, Lego had the foresight to not stealth with them. He stayed like 100 feet behind because he's wearing heavy armor and he's not very good. He actually picked up an illness. He picked up a coughing fever while out in the swamps, so his dex has actually been lowered. He's kind of coughing a bit, so he stayed further back, and so the two that went up did fine with their stealth checks, and I'm like, okay, fine, you know, fine, because they're being cautious, they're being smart. It's all fine. I'm fine with this. And so they keep following the mantis men, just seeing what they do, and the mantis men eventually like set up an ambush for some giant geckos. There's 5 mantis men, you know, and they watch as the mantis men just leap upon the giant geckos in an ambush and just eviscerate them. You know, they're just slice off in heads. They're just biting heads off, like just butcher them without taking any damage. And it was really kind of interesting because just the previous night they had struggled themselves a decent amount with one of these giant geckos, and my mom had taken a bunch of damage. And now here they see 5 mantis men just eviscerating a group of geckos without taking any damage themselves, and it's like, oh, holy shit, these geckos or these mantis men are no joke. And the mantis men aren't really a joke. They are pretty weak. I mean, they only have like 4 health each, so they're not like super durable or sturdy or anything, but they are dangerous in an ambush specifically. And so this really scared the group, and they're like, oh fuck, these mantis men are serious. We can't do this. What are we gonna do? We gotta get, we gotta go... I think they wanted to just go back to town or something. There was some discussion, and so they were like, okay, we're gonna go south. I think they were still trying to find the froglings. So they went south to the lake, because my aunt was convinced that the froglings live in the lake, because they're frogs. And we were like, well, you know, tree frogs don't live in a lake, near a lake. And especially funny, because the druid told them exactly where to find the froglings, but none of them are good at taking notes at all. So they go towards the lake, and they get another random encounter along the way. They really were not rolling too well when it came to that. And this time it ended up being a group of 4 giant geckos. And I rolled a little bit and decided that they were kind of just protecting their young a little bit. They were near some giant gecko eggs and stuff. And so it didn't start as an encounter. They were just like 60 feet away from this group of geckos, and they could see they were protecting their young, and the geckos were kind of on alert, but they very easily could have just left and walked away. But they were like, no, you know, we need XP and things like that. We're definitely going to get XP out of this, and we can't just walk away from every fight. And this seems doable. And it was doable. Had they kind of been smart at all about it. But my aunt just took out her gun and shot. To her credit, with that shot from her gun, she fucking blew the head straight off one of the geckos, just in pure red salsa explosion of viscera. You know, like, it was a great shot, don't get me wrong. And had they not been protecting their young, they would have immediately all just fled. I don't know if I'd give 2 XP for something like that. I don't know if that's a significant, like, or anything like that. Maybe 1. I'd maybe just throw 1 at them. But yeah, I mean, it would have been very safe, very easy, and yeah, there you go. And then they could have carved up the gecko and gotten something out of that. You know, I don't know. It would have been something. But they were protecting their young, and I was like, okay, you know, they're not just gonna all abandon their eggs here. They're gonna try to take care of this threat. And so they charged in, and we ran the combat. There were 3 of them, 3 on each side, blah, blah, blah. And it went mostly okay, except my aunt just, yeah, I rolled really well against her, and I rolled my damage against her really well, and it just... She got low on health and didn't take any preventative measures. Now, in hindsight, I should have told her that there is an action you can take on your turn that forces all enemies against you to have disadvantage on their attacks, and you just play very defensively. And, you know, when you get low on health and you've got your allies right next to you, it's a not bad idea, because if you try to run, they get a free attack against you, whereas if you just hold your ground, it's fairly unlikely they'll hit you. That being said, unless I mentioned it right at that moment, there was no way she would remember that. So, it's kind of whatever. So, she went down. She went down to, you know, 0 health. And the others finished the fight. And then we went over, you know, the death rules. And in Tales of Argosa, basically, if you go down to 0, at the end of combat, your allies can roll your body over to see if you're still alive. And at that point, you make a death saving throw. Which, you know, early on is pretty close to 50-50, usually. If someone puts healing magic on you before you roll, you can get a +2. And she did, so she had slightly above 50-50 odds of surviving. And she did. She survived. And I'm like, okay, that's good. You know, you're going to have like 1 HP now. And you have to roll on the injuries and setbacks table. And I was looking over the table, and I was like, yeah, you know, just, there's some kind of bad stuff here, of course, but, you know, just don't roll a 20. Because that's kind of the worst result. You don't really want to roll a 20. She rolls a 20. Of course. And the 20 result is that your neck is fractured, and you are paralyzed from the neck down for 12 weeks while you recover. And you also permanently lose 1 point of constitution. None of them were very pleased with this. Obviously, you know, my aunt, because her neck was paralyzed, and then the others because they now have to deal with this person that they have to carry with them, and they either have to, like, wait by their bedside and take care of them for 12 weeks, or find someone to take care of them for 12 weeks, so on and so forth. And eventually, I mean, this led to quite a discussion, and my aunt was just not pleased with any of it, because it just did not look good for her. Until they asked me, is there a question for God about what they should do with her character, and what's the best course of action. And I just said, you know, put a bullet in her. Because it's just like, realistically, this person would just be done, you know? They would not be adventuring or anything. And so they pretty much ended up doing that and burying her, and my aunt made a new character, and she wanted to be basically the same character. She wanted to be the same class and everything, but I made her re-roll her attributes and all that. I made her re-roll her template, because I'm using templates from Axe, but she got the same template, so it didn't matter. And she mostly was the same character until I offhanded mentioned that, you know, and if she didn't want to play a human this time, she could play like a halfling or something. And so she ended up playing a halfling. And halflings in Tales of Argosa get advantage on all stealth-related rolls, which is pretty nice. No matter what class you are, you just get advantage on stealth and any stealth-related rolls. Like, I don't know, pickpocketing or something I might allow. So she was a very similar character, but now a halfling. And the group met up with her. They actually got kind of... They were going to stay in Ilmire for a little bit. They're very wary of Ilmire, by the way. They're very scared of it. I may have overplayed it a little bit with the smiling people, because they're very terrified of Ilmire and don't want to spend any amount of time there, especially now that they know that the cult is like kind of poisoning people in town. So they don't want to spend any amount of time in Ilmire, which makes things a little difficult, but not really that bad. That's just, you know, a choice they're making. So they were staying temporarily at my mom's character's aunt and uncle's little home that they actually broke into previously. And while there, I realized that I didn't introduce at all the local kind of militia, the local guard, because they're corrupt, you know, they're part of the cult and everything, and a bunch of them have these mind phages in that are making them into these smiling people. So while they're in the house, they get a knock on the door. And I decided that the captain of the guard, this kind of bandit figure, does not have one of the mind pages in it. But his 2 goons do. And so obviously he's trying to like run them out of town because they don't seem to be up to any good, you know, in relation to the cult's activities here. They could be a potential threat to the cult. So he's trying to run them out of town instead of like just having them killed or try to convert them or anything. So he's just like, oh, you know, troublemaker, you broke in the door and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, and my mom's like, well, you know, this is my aunt and uncle's house and blah, blah, blah. And Lego was like, isn't she the next of kin and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you show me some papers proving that and blah, you know, we'll see what we can do. But as far as I'm concerned, you're troublemakers that broke into this home and came up with this sob story. And didn't consult, you know, the mayor or anyone as part of the town about who you are, what you're doing here. And they realized they were on the losing end of this battle. Because, I mean, yes, they could just be troublemakers that broke in and came up with this sob story. And it didn't help that they did break the door in. So they eventually left. And then they were heading out of town, and that's when they bumped into my aunt's new character, and they became fast friends, as always, you know. And they were talking about going back to, like, the big town a couple days away. And I don't remember exactly why they wanted to go there. I think they wanted to do some shopping or something, but they had no money, so I don't really know. I think they just wanted to get away from Illmire. I think they wanted to recover or something. I think they wanted to do a long rest. Which is like 7 days of peaceful rest. And they didn't want to do it in Illmire. And they didn't want to do it out in the wilderness, obviously. But I'm like, no, that's lame. We gotta do something more interesting than that. And so I set up that while they're walking along the road to the east, they find an overturned carriage and like a dead horse, and it's clear that there was an attack here and like a kidnapping. And so they decided to follow the tracks, try and help out. And that led them to another nearby hex, which is like a militia outpost on like a plateau. It's like an encampment with a tower. And it's been taken over by some bandits who are now kind of masquerading as the local militia. And they start kind of scoping out the scene, and they see a lot of bandits, you know, and the bandits are supposed to be masquerading as the local militia. And I kind of skipped over that, and I just described them as bandits, because I was like, okay, well, we'll just cut out the middleman here, the sort of discovery process. But yeah, so they see a lot of bandits, and they're just really not sure, but they're like, they see that they could maybe climb up with a grappling hook and climb in and sneak in and stuff like that. So they wait for night. It starts to actually snow a little bit because it's like early spring. And I'm trying to follow all the hex rules properly, so I'm rolling for weather every day, and I'm keeping track of time and watches, and we're doing travel rules and blah 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 blah. Trying to make it all very authentic. So they wait for night, and they sneak up kind of the back of the encampment towards where the tower is, and they approach the tower. They see there's a door there. They see there's not many people out because it's nighttime. And they're like, okay, we should sneak in. We should sneak in and figure out, you know, how many are in there and, you know, where... They strongly suspect that if there's prisoners, they might be in this tower, so they want to get in the tower. And then Lego decides that really my aunt's character should just go in by herself, because he was like, she has advantage on stealth, you know, that's really big. It's very important. It's very big. So she's going to be very good at it. So she's just going to go in alone. And my aunt was very nervous about this, and she's expressed this nervousness in the past that she doesn't like the idea of having to go in on her own into a stealth situation. It's a lot of pressure on her, you know. She gets scared. But she agreed because you know, Lego convinced her it was the best plan. And so she started sneaking in. And she has advantage on stealth, but she also rolled really well. Like, exceptionally well. So I was like, okay, you know, she's sneaking around, and she's pretty much invisible. Again, I should have rolled perception for, like, sleeping guards or something. And at one point, a guard kind of walked into the tower to go to his room, and I didn't even roll perception there, because they're just like, you know, I don't want her to fail. You know, I want her to roll well, I want her to do well. I want this to be a success for her, so she feels better about stealth. And she just had a character die, so I want this to be a good moment for her. And it was. So she ended up sneaking down into the basement of the tower, where she heard some, like, groaning noises and a foul stench. And she opened up a door into a torture chamber, and where there were a couple guys on some stone tables being, you know, they've been tortured. And so she ended up freeing them. And one of the guys is the actual captain of the militia that has been captured and tortured. And then the other guy is a monk that was at the temple that the cult took over. And the book says that he's a blind monk. And I wasn't sure if he was blind before the torture or not. So I decided to just make it more interesting, and he was blinded through the torture. And so the module specifically says that if they free the captain of the militia, he leads them through a secret door nearby where there are 3 magical items, some potions, and 700 gold pieces. And so they rescue the 2, they haul this treasure out, and the treasure is like a +1 chainmail, a +2 short sword, a magical horn that can, like, knock down enemies nearby, and then, you know, potions of healing, cure light wounds, and 700 gold pieces. This was a massive haul for them, because they've gotten, like, nothing so far. So this was a huge haul, both in terms of the actual loot, and I gave them a total of 10 XP for finding all this loot and for rescuing those 2 and doing it successfully, you know, with no trouble. And it was really well done. Obviously, I hand waved a couple things, but still, overall, really, really good. So they got 10 XP, which immediately leveled up my aunt's new character from 0 XP level 1 to level 2. And this was part of what upset her about dying, is they had just hit level 2. And she had just gotten her gun, and she used it once, and then she died and was back to level 1 again. But now she got back to level 2 right away, so she's very happy. Everyone was very happy, and we ended the session on a pretty good note. But I couldn't leave it off quite like that, so as they were, like, leaving the tower, going back down their rope, they saw through a doorway to another building nearby, and they saw there were, like, people chained to the wall. So they know that, you know, there's still captives here that they could rescue, and you know, there's still trouble here. Well, that's where we ended it. But yeah, they were quite pleased.
Wants a workshop too?
Hail to Margosa, really, really solid system that I've been enjoying with, you know, a few changes. They've been enjoying it. Evils of Ilmire so far seems really solid little mini campaign. So everything's good. We're not playing next week, unfortunately, but after that, I will have our magic user back, and they'll have perhaps a bit more plan about what they want to do with these bandits and the cult and everything, and they're going to continue to grow more powerful and get more items. They've got 700 gold now they can throw around. So, yeah, I do expect that they're going to go back to the big city nearby to do some spending. But that's fine. I mean, that's what money's for, right? So, yeah, all good. All good stuff. Alright, so anyways, more Monster Hunter Wilds this week, more solo role manging. And then on the Exploring series, the last part of Black Adatum, finally. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Good stuff. But my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.